Hey guys, your friendly neighborhood vampire witch here. Today we're going to be diving into a topic that blends culture, shame, and medical practice: hymenoplasty. This isn't about judgment, it is about understanding why this surgery exists and what that says about our world that we live in. I would like to say, starting, that I am not a medical professional, but I am very passionate about women's health issues and helping to stop the spread of misinformation and harmful myths about these issues. So, what exactly is hymenoplasty? According to dictionary.com, it is a surgical operation to reconstruct the hymen in order to give the appearance of virginity, usually for religious or cultural reasons. Hymenoplasty is generally not performed for medical reasons. So then why is it even offered as a medical procedure? Well, it is often sought for cultural or personal reasons, particularly in relations to perceptions of virginity. There are no established medical conditions that require it, so this surgery is mostly cosmetic or cultural. The real medical reasons that doctors cite for it is psychological or social, to relieve extreme emotional distress, fear of social rejection, or even a fear of violence, especially in cultures where proof of virginity is demanded from women. There are many reasons a woman might seek out hymenoplasty, and in some cultures, a woman is physically inspected to verify her hymen is intact, to make sure that she is still a virgin. This is why it's sometimes referred to as virginity restoration surgery. Sometimes when a woman has suffered any type of sexual trauma, they seek out the surgery as a way to empower themselves and see it as a way to restore what was taken from them, even just symbolically. And in many parts of the world, if a woman doesn't bleed on her wedding night, she could face humiliation, divorce, or even physical harm. Hymenoplasty is offered to help them pass as virgins and avoid these consequences. So, while it is performed by doctors, it is not about healing the body. It is about protecting someone from stigma or danger. And this raises a serious ethical issue. Should we really be fixing the body, or should we be fixing the culture that punishes people for their anatomy? This isn't about judging people who have chosen it. Sometimes it is a survival strategy, but let's be real. The fact that anyone feels the need to prove their virginity is the real problem. Hymenoplasty is often requested by women for cultural or religious reasons, where a woman's virginity before marriage is valued. So let's talk about the biggest myths surrounding the hymen and how they have hurt so many people. The first myth is that the hymen is a seal that breaks during the first intercourse. Many of us were taught that the hymen is like a seal, something that covers the vaginal opening and then breaks the first time someone has sex. But this is simply not true. The hymen is actually a thin, stretchy ring of tissue with an opening. It doesn't seal anything shut. And for most people, it is already partially open because it has to be. That is how the period blood comes out, after all. That is how tampons and menstrual cups go in. Some people are even born with little or no hymen tissue. Others stretch it through sports, horseback riding, or simply by growing up. The second myth is that bleeding equals virginity, or put another way, that bleeding during first sex means that you were a virgin. This one is dangerous. The idea that real virgins bleed is not only inaccurate, it is harmful. Not everyone bleeds the first time, and in fact, many people don't. Bleeding can happen if someone isn't aroused, if there is not enough lubrication, or if things are rushed or painful. But it has nothing to do with moral purity. Expecting bleeding can create pressure to prove something that was never visible to begin with. And when someone doesn't bleed, it can lead to false accusations, shame, or worse. The third myth is that a woman's value is tied to her sexual purity. This one hurts the most. For generations, women have been taught that their value solely depends on staying pure, which usually means not having sex. But that's just not how human worth works. People are not objects. Your value isn't measured by your sexual history or your hymen or whether or not you bleed. These purity myths were created to control women's bodies, to police their behavior, and to shame people into silence. They are rooted in the patriarchy and not in truth. If you believed any of these myths, don't feel bad. Most of us were taught them. What matters is that we are unlearning them now. Your body is not dirty. Your choices don't make you less worthy. And your value, that was never up for debate. So why does the surgery exist? Excuse the typo here. My autocorrect kept trying to change it. I guess I didn't catch that. Did it again. Sorry about that. But in many cultures, a woman not bleeding on her wedding night can be shamed, divorced, or harmed. There's a fear of violence, rejection, or dishonor that's fueling the demand. Pressures from family, religious expectations, or even their partner can make them want to have the surgery done. Sometimes the surgery is even done without full autonomous consent or even under emotional coercion. So why is hymenoplasty a problem? Why should we care if someone chooses this surgery? Because the existence of this surgery just isn't neutral. It reflects a world where people, especially women, are punished for how their bodies naturally are. It is not just about anatomy, it is about control. It reinforces harmful beliefs about women's worth. When people feel they have to fix their bodies to seem untouched or innocent, it reinforces the idea that a woman's value is tied to her virginity, that their body is only worthy if it has been saved for someone else. And that is not medical care. That is repackaged shame. It medicalizes shame instead of addressing the cultural harm. Instead of helping people question where these fears come from, it offers a band-aid for deep-rooted cultural wounds. This surgery doesn't solve the fear of rejection, violence, or judgment. It just masks it. And when we normalize fixing the body to match oppressive expectations, we leave the harmful beliefs intact. It can re-traumatize the survivors of sexual assault who feel pressure to restore their hymen. Some survivors are told that they need to restore their virginity through this procedure, as if the violence done to them made them less whole somehow. That idea is cruel, and it tells survivors that their trauma made them impure or broken, and that is a lie. I know this is personally one that I believed. Growing up in purity culture and in my very strictly Catholic household, I was very much raised that, like, you had to be intact and pure and a virgin at the time of your wedding night. Now, what I was taught virginity meant is that you couldn't be penetrated in that region until your wedding night. And if you were, then you were worthless and you were basically cast out, banished, shunned. The family would have nothing more to do with you. As far as they were concerned, you were better off dead, or, and because you were a quote unquote whore, and now that was just going to be your life. So they would just throw you out, leave you to figure it out for yourself, and come what may. So whenever I was 18 and I was assaulted, I had a lot of problems after that, believing that I had any worth. I had a lot of PTSD around it, and because I couldn't hide the evidence, because I was, like, obviously very injured and A lot of people already knew about it because one of my friends that knew about it had told a bunch of people, and I'd felt like I was dirty and contaminated. I felt like there was something wrong with me. I I suffered a miscarriage that was very bloody and traumatic. And for a long time, I felt like that made me broken in some way, that I needed to fix it somehow. And that, well, I didn't even know about this surgery back then, but if I had, I probably would have sought it out because I felt like I needed to fix it because I didn't feel like my family would accept me. I didn't feel like I was worthy of anything, which led me into a lot of abusive relationships where I was trafficked, among other things, because I just didn't believe I had any self worth. And it took years of therapy and healing and to get to a point where I know now that that's not true. And some people aren't so lucky. Some people don't get out. Some people don't find resources to help them. And that's unfortunate. And it's part of the reason why I got my degrees. My bachelor's in forensic science and my master's in forensic psychology was because I wanted to be able to help survivors of abuse. So they didn't have to suffer alone, so they could find the resources, so they could heal. That being said, I do believe that it's important to note that survivors don't need fixing. They need safety, support, resources, and respect. Another reason why that the surgery is a problem is because it fuels body insecurity and pressures to perform purity for safety and acceptance. And for many, this procedure isn't about choice. It is about survival. And it is done to avoid shame, to calm family pressure, or to meet a partner's expectations. And that is not freedom. That is performance. When someone has to risk surgery just to seem acceptable to somebody else, we have to ask, what kind of world makes that necessary? And is it really one that we want to continue to live in? This isn't about shaming anyone who has had this procedure done. Sometimes it is done for protection, not perfection. But it is a problem when society creates the fear that drives this decision. If someone's body makes them feel unsafe, the problem isn't their anatomy. It is the culture that taught them to fear it. And these aren't just outdated ideas. We are living with the consequences of them even today. Virginity testing and the obsession with bleeding the first time is still a problem. In some parts of the world, girls are still subjected to virginity testing, a practice where someone, sometimes even a doctor, examines a girl's hymen to verify if she has had sex. It is an invasive and inaccurate procedure, and it's traumatic. This really should be banned because there's no scientific basis for it. You can't test for virginity. Virginity is a social idea, not a medical condition. And a lot of women are growing up to believe that they have to bleed the first time they have sex, and if they don't, people won't believe them that they were pure. But bleeding is not a reliable indicator of anything. This obsession puts so much pressure on the first experience, especially for newlyweds. What should be a personal and emotional moment becomes a performance to prove something that was never meant to be proven. There's a lot of guilt, anxiety, and fear around firsts. For many, the first time isn't about curiosity or love, it is about fear. Fear of doing it wrong, fear of being seen as ruined, fear of not meeting expectations set by misinformed family, religion, or culture. Some people carry guilt and shame for years, not because they were harmed, but because they were taught their worth depended on their purity. That emotional weight can damage relationships, one's own body image, and self esteem. Today, parents, partners, and even doctors are still misinformed. The problem doesn't stop with teenagers. Grown adults are still believing these myths. Some parents pressure their daughters to stay intact Some partners get angry or suspicious when someone doesn't believe them. Even some doctors are perpetuating these ideas, either through virginity testing or by agreeing to do hymenoplasty without helping patients understand what their hymen really is. Some girls are forced to prove their virginity, not because of science, but because of stigma. These are real girls that are being forced to prove their virginity on their wedding night in front of family, sometimes with stained sheets or worse. Sometimes their safety or social standing depends on it. Imagine being told that your body must show evidence, or you are a liar, a disgrace, and no longer deserving of love. These myths aren't just old-fashioned, they're dangerous. They create a world where girls are humiliated, hurt, or silenced over something that should never be up for debate. And it is time that we stop letting this happen, because a person's worth is not between their legs, and it never was. If someone chooses hymenoplasty for their safety or peace of mind, they deserve compassion, not judgment. But we also need to address why they felt this pressure in the first place and work towards changing that. Some helpful resources are the Labia Library, which is a visual education on anatomy and normal variation. Scarleteen.com is a youth-focused sex education that dismantles purity myths. And bedsider.org is an honest source about birth control and information about the body. The Purity Myth by Jessica Valenti breaks down how society equates a woman's moral worth with her sexual behavior, especially her virginity. She explains how this idea isn't just outdated, but how it is actively harmful. It shames girls for being curious, silences survivors of sexual violence, and teaches women that their value lies in being untouched. This book connects the dots between hymen myths, virginity testing, and purity culture in schools, media, and even politics. It makes it clear purity isn't empowerment, it is control. Sexual Citizens, gosh dang, just noticed that typo too. Wow. I went over this a couple times too. Sorry, guys. I'm a human. I make mistakes. If college textbooks can have typos, I can have typos. Sexual Citizens by, I'm going to probably butcher their names, Jessica Hirsch and Seamus Khan. Looks at sex ed through the lens of power, space, and entitlement. It is based on in-depth research with young adults and explains why so many people struggle with boundaries, consent, and shame. One of the most powerful takeaways is that we are not taught to think of ourselves or others as having the right to sexual self-determination. Instead, many people grow up thinking of sex as something they give or prove. That mindset is deeply tied to virginity myths. This book shows how sexual violence and confusion thrive in cultures where people aren't taught to respect their own bodies, let alone anyone else's. Both these books help explain how we got here and how we can move forward. They remind us that dismantling purity myths isn't about personal healing. It is about creating a safer, more respectful world for everyone. However, they are not light reads, but they will be eye-opening. If this video hit home for you, these books will feel like the next step. It is time we challenge these myths that are actively hurting people. Have you heard of this procedure before, or did you grow up believing these myths about virginity? So let's talk kindly in the comments. If you found this helpful, please share it. It might help someone else feel less alone. And remember, you are not broken. Thanks for staying with me through this, guys, through all the typos and me probably mispronouncing the name of the procedure horribly. We're all just human here. Making mistakes is what we do. Anyway, thanks again, guys. Go out and spread the love, because love always wins. See you next time.